I first met Tom Eggum in late January 1975. Jan and I had gone on our first date the night before. I was in 11th grade, Jan was in 12th grade, and we went to see Young Frankenstein. The next night, we went to see Tom Eggum. And Tom was
scarier.
Yeah,
which was scarier?
I won't even comment. Yeah. So now Tom was speaking at the Met Sports Stadium, which is where the Minnesota North Stars used to play hockey up in the Minneapolis area. And my dad said that he had heard Tom speak the night before and was very, very excited for me to meet Tom. And so we met at that rally. And there were thousands of young people there. So this is, again, 1975. And Tom, I have a hunch that the last place you thought you would be in January of 1975 was talking about Jesus to thousands of young people in the Minneapolis area. How did you get there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you were anything but a Jesus guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Back in your younger days.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. So how did Jesus get a hold of your life?
Well, that's what's great about seeing you, is your family was a huge influence. Your grandfather had the Lutheran evangelistic movement, headed that up. Did he found it, or?
No, he was the director of it.
He was the director, yeah. And they had a gospel team that came to my hometown down in Thompson, Iowa, and they trained there for a couple weeks. And I harassed them because at the time I was going through a lot of anger and a lot of bitterness, and a lot of my anger was towards people that believed in God. And so here came this group of probably 30 young singers, and they were beautiful people in a lot of ways, and they were singing stuff, and I harassed them, and they invited me to church. So I thought, no, I'm not going to church. And somebody said something that I'll never forget. He said, "Oh, you act so tough. I didn't think you'd be afraid to go to church."
Oh.
And you know how that is. And so I said, "Okay, I'll be there, and I'm going to bring my friends," which was exactly what they wanted. And so I showed up, and we sat up in the balcony and started out by trying to make a disturbance. But the message got through to me. They were not talking about a God that hated me because of my anger and who I was. They were talking about a loving God. And, I couldn't resist that. I was hurting inside. And so that resonated with me. And it took a while for the message to get in. We took off and on our motorcycles and roared out and tried to disturb the end. I suppose it was some sort of a call to come forward or whatever. And it wasn't until later that I got in trouble with the law that I reflected back on the message of the Lutheran evangelistic movement, Gospel Crusaders, and gave my life to Christ.
So once that happened, your next step was to go to the Lutheran Bible Institute.
Right.
Of which I'm a graduate as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, what was difficult about those early days, I worked at the local grain elevator and, tried to live a straight life and try to go through this change. And a Lutheran pastor took me under his wing. And he was so loving and so understanding and caring and said, "You need to go out to the California Lutheran Bible School in Los Angeles." And so he really made that possible. So I went out to LBI in Los Angeles for my first education, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah. So now those who don't know young Tom Eggum, he used to have this big, bushy head of hair and a big Gene Shalit mustache.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you would prefer to say Tom Selleck mustache.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I was cute back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't age well.
Yeah, exactly. And I see people that knew me back then, they go, "What happened to the hair?"
Yeah, well, I get the same thing.
Sure,
I used to have hair too.
Yeah, I remember.
I used to be Tim Wright.
Yes, I remember that.
So now one of the things that you did that God called you to shortly after you experienced the love of Jesus was to bring the gospel to places where the gospel was not allowed to be.
Right.
Soviet Union, China.
Yeah.
So for a while, you were a Bible smuggler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So give us a story or two about those experiences.
Well, it was interesting because as I began to learn the Bible and the culture of the LBI that I was a part of, I realized I'm a little different than a lot of these people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see myself being a pastor in a church or, working within the church per se. I saw myself as still the rebel. And so I would go out on State Street in Los Angeles and witness to the motorcycle gangs and go up on Hollywood Boulevard and buy coffee for kids struggling with drugs because I knew what that was.
Yeah.
And that's where I felt at home. I read a book called God's Smuggler, written by a guy named Brother Andrew, and it was a great story. He would fill the back seat of his Volkswagen with Bibles and come up to the East German border or the Soviet border and pray. He'd pray a prayer. He'd say, Jesus, when you saw blind people, you made them see. Now when you see seeing people, guards, make them blind.
Yeah.
And these incredible stories. So I thought, that's me. I can do something illegal for God. And I'd like to say I had this call from heaven, but it was just like, I fit that.
Yeah.
I want to go do some, stuff to get in trouble. So I really changed, as you can tell, right? Yeah. So while I was, my first trip back in 72, smuggled Bibles into the Soviet Union. We had Bibles jammed down our pants, two of us. We came up to the Soviet border, and this is a time where, it's easy to talk about it, but when it comes down to it, you better have faith.
Yeah,
because
right.
we're watching what's going on in front of us, and they're literally frisking everybody in their cars, having them stand up and frisk, and then they'd dismantle a lot of the interiors of the vehicles. They got to us, and they said, get out, and I fully expected the search. No search happened. They got inside our van. They tore the side panels apart. There was a pit they walked underneath, see if we'd hidden anything underneath, and they even checked down a periscope type thing down in the gas tank to search, and an hour and a half, 2 hours, I don't remember, but they let us go. And this guy named Brad and I, Brad Gill was my guy at the time, and we drove in silence because it's like, what just happened? Well, that was the first of many, many times seeing God's presence and helped us and guarded those
Well,
Bibles.
and you also had some interesting stories about how God led you to people who were Christian people who needed the literature, needed Bibles, and who didn't even have Bibles.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that was the part where, when you're a Bible school student and a Bible graduate or whatever, you come out with this, you've got it all figured out, and you've got this and that, and I'll tell you, and I thought, I'm super faith, I'm going in, I've got all this faith, I'm going to have this boldness to go into the Soviet Union and whatever they do to me, that sort of thing. But I'm telling you, when you get there and experience it and then sense God's presence, it's very humbling. And you realize this is way bigger than anything I thought it'd be. And then it's, okay, how do I meet people to give the Bibles to? And in Brother Andrew's training, we actually went through his training in Holland before we made this trip in. And he said, just pray that God will speak to a believer there and just leave the rest to him. And you're going, yeah, with me? I doubt it, And so, sure enough, when we met in Moscow, we were in front of the big Baptist church there, and a young girl and her father came up and approached us and said, we must speak with you, but I cannot talk here. And they went down the street. And then later we met up with them, and my question was, how did you know? We had cut our hair really short. We wore these European suits so we'd fit in. And she said, well, last night my papa was in prayer, and God told my papa, 2 American boys will bring bread. And I'm like, whew, in tears. I just can't believe this is happening. I said, yeah, but how'd you know we were the 2? And she said, at first we thought you were from the Ukraine. But then she said, the Spirit of Christ in us will witness the Spirit of Christ in you. And we knew you were the 2. Well, you talk about, that was something, I felt like my faith was about that big, compared to what I was about to encounter. And story after story, life after life, year after year, the same kinds of things, One more little story there. She would tell about meeting in these secret meetings. And he was a university professor and did a study in the life of Jesus. And when he did the study of the life of Jesus, he came to realize that Jesus was who he said he was. And of course, he was removed from the university, and the whole family received a lot of persecution. And it was just amazing. And they said, we have to meet secretly. And I said, how do you know where to meet? And they said, oh, when we meet in a flat, we'll pray and say, the next meeting, ask God where it is, and he'll tell you where it is. Well, I'm thinking, if I did that, I'd end up at Circle K or something,
Right.
you know. And it was absolutely amazing. And they told an experience of knocking a door they'd never been before, and believers that opened the door and said, we've been waiting for you. So it was another level of faith that I thought, when I first approached this whole thing of the Eastern Europe and all of that, and bringing Bibles to people that did not have Bibles, I was there to help them.
Yeah.
Well, the impact that they had on me, and then for the opportunity I had to speak even at that event where we met, to tell thousands of kids this story, you know, and to be able to, it was just absolutely amazing. You know, so yeah, those were incredible days.
In 1985, we went over to China. You brought us over to China. We went to Korea and China, and we brought some literature in. And I remember, man, I was really nervous. And Tom's just over there laughing at me. You know, I just, you know, because it was my first time.
Right.
But the honor and privilege to be able to hand out some of that literature on the street corners. And then we had an interpreter with us the whole time, both an interpreter and someone to kind of keep an eye on us, I guess. And we went, he took us to a church service, I remember, and, you know, it was one of the legal church services.
Registered church,
And remember him afterwards talking about these stories that he had heard for the first time, and one of them was Dan. He said, I heard a story about this guy who was thrown into a lion's pit, and he just couldn't believe the story he had heard. And to think, well, some seeds were planted that day in his life. So now,
can I interject a quick story?
Yeah.
I think the trip we were on may have been my first trip into China, or had I been there
You'd been there before.
Okay, one before. Because in 1981, I'd gotten arrested in the Soviet Union for smuggling Bibles, illegal literature, anti-Soviet literature is what they called it, and banned for 5 years. So I started going to China. So that's why how we started in China there for at least 5 years.
And part of the reason that I know it was your second time was because you had asked that we would be housed at the Great Wall, the Sheraton Great Wall Hotel.
Yeah, it was a brand new one.
Right, it was brand new, one of the first Western hotels.
Yes, that's right.
They put us somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so Tom said, we're not staying here. And that night we went over to that hotel and we checked in. And our guide came the next day and said, you can't do that, because they need to know where you are the whole time.
Sure.
And thankfully we were there, because I had Peking duck. And Peking duck had me the next day for the whole day.
Good point.
And it was good to be in a hotel with some real food.
Oh, wow.
Now many of you who are watching, who get our emails, know that Jan and I have been going through some stuff with cancer for Jan, and we're going to be meeting with the doctors this week. It looks like everything's going to be okay. It's going to be treatable, but we don't know for sure. But there'll be some surgery, something coming up. But you had a real cancer scare several years ago, and where this was life-threatening. And that you're even here today really is a story. So
absolutely,
tell us a little bit about the cancer. And then how did your faith help you through that real time of crisis?
Wow. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and further along we got in the diagnosis, we realized that it had escaped out into the lymph nodes and in the seminal vesicles, and so it was actually determined that it was stage 4. I went through the radiation treatment, you know, the daily for, I think, 5 weeks, and then I had the seeds, and then had cryotherapy, and then finally, to try to get it stopped, I did the Lutheran, or the hormone treatment, for a year. And it was really a difficult time. I would say not so much my faith got me through it, but the encouragement from people around me, family, and really in the middle of all of this, I was in Africa, and I obviously go to Africa a lot, and I was in we had actually moved to Maryland to be closer to my wife Sarah's family, because, I mean, it was critical. I was, you know, pretty much planning, I had a succession plan for our ministry and all of that, and I went with our church from Virginia to this little village, and the pastor stopped and said, "We need to pray for Tom." And I was on hormone treatment, which it's basically going through the change of life. I'm sweating. Okay, I'm moody. I'm crabby. Okay, and they reached their hands out and prayed for me. And here are these poorest people on the planet.
Yeah. And
they're praying for me, and it was very humbling. But I really sensed a fire, not just the hot flashes.
Yeah.
But I knew something was happening. It was undescribable. Well, long story short, I started getting better, stronger. Cancer began disappearing. When I was still going to my oncologist out here in Arizona, and when I had one of my final checkups, he brought in a medical student. He said, "I wanted my medical student to meet you because you beat all the odds." They were saying like a 5% survival. So this was really, really something. And then in the statement, my physician said, and I have a feeling, he's on social media with me, and he says, "I have a feeling it has something to do with those Africans praying." And I'm telling you, it's just God's hand of favor. I've been given a second chance. I am in complete remission. I just turned 70. And I'm a rancher in Oklahoma, and I just feel like God's giving me this second chance, and I want to make sure that the days I have, I live it to its fullest.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
And can I just say how well said that is?
Okay.
Because that's certainly something I've been thinking about as well, as we went through where at first the news was pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
And just thought, these are the times where the community of faith holds you when you're not sure where your faith is. And it wasn't that I doubted God or God's love, but it's just you need other people to carry you through those times.
Well, I've lived this incredible life. I've been to over 100 nations. I've had the experiences of many lifetimes. So my attitude was, I'm ready. I mean, if this is it, wow, what a life. But I had an African pastor say, "You're living like you're dying."
Yeah, interesting.
Live like you're living.
Yeah.
And it really I'll tell you, attitude has a lot to do with it.
Yep.
But I can tell you many down times, especially under hormone treatment.
Sure.
I thought, if this is a quality of life, I don't want to continue. I actually made a decision to stop early on the treatment. And my doctor was furious and said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have, it's going to appear in your neck, probably first, going on and on." And, but I don't want to paint the picture that I had this strong faith all through it. What was most difficult is when you'd go test and then that period of waiting.
Oh, horrible.
It's awful.
Horrible.
And that's when, I tell people, don't be afraid to say, "You know what, I am really struggling."
Yep.
And then that's when people can come in and pray for you and be that encouragement to you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now, we had a chance to work together at Community Church of Joy for years. Tom was our youth director for a while. But now you do, and you've been doing for years, Hope for Kids International.
Yeah.
So give us an update on what you're doing in your mission and ministry these days.
Well, next year, 2023, I'm going to celebrate 50 years of doing ministry. And even when I was at Joy, I did this part-time. And you remember I was part-time and all, but great chapter in my life, man. That the friendships made through that time and the impact on kids. I mean, I'm on social media with a lot of those kids today, and it's had a lifetime of impact. So, yeah, absolutely. So let me give you, I'm sure a lot of you are not aware of Hope for Kids International. It's the same organization that was started in my hometown in Lake Mills, Iowa 49 years ago. But let me give you a quick update. And I know a lot of you follow us and know what it is. But anyway, here's our logo and our details of being able to go to our website for more information. h4ki.org is where you can. And this is just a glimpse of my family. In fact, I've been here in Arizona this week, and I've been hanging out with my three older kids, Nick, Stefan, and Natalie, going to the golf tournament and the Suns game the other night. On your right, I guess, you'll see a picture of Sarah and I, my wife Sarah, who's a rocket scientist, kind of. She does projects for NASA, and she's a data analytic scientist. And yes.
Boy, you married way above your head.
Oh, way. Yeah, way. Yeah. And then on the lower picture there, you'll see my son Grant. And then on the left, a beautiful young lady who lives with us. She's lived with us for 3 years. She's really like our daughter now. And then my youngest, Sophia, who's 18, and they'll be graduating this year. And then my grandbabies. I see you on social media with your grandbabies. And I've got 2. I'll be with them actually all this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. So. And I live on a ranch, as I mentioned. I've got donkeys, horses, cattle, and when people say, how are your babies, they're not talking about my family. They're talking about my donkeys. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. We've been there 5 years now. But anyway, back to Hope for Kids. Our mission is to restore hope around the world by empowering kids to break the cycle of extreme poverty through these principles: dignity, health, joy, and love. And this is the foundation of everything we do. One of the things we do is take international mission trips, and they've been on pause through COVID, but we're resuming them probably most likely fully in November of 2022. But we go to Uganda and Guatemala and Mexico and the Philippines and Romania and Nepal and India. So those are some of our destinations. What's amazing, Tim, is when we got locked down 2 years ago, I thought, oh boy, no teams traveling, this is going to be tough. But we actually, 2020 was our best year in 48 years.
Wow.
2022 blew that away and was our best year so far.
Yeah.
And big reason is we do projects all over the world, and we're able to, some of the countries, they paused them for a while, but because of our reputation of Hope for Kids, they continued to build. We've got all kinds of, we actually run 7 schools now. We have a 26-acre campus there that we own. We opened up a vocational school this year. It just opened January 15th when kids went back. We have a high school on our campus.
Wow.
We have medical centers throughout Uganda. We have an Adopt a Village plan that we buy 10 to 20 acres, and donors will fund building a medical clinic, a community center. We call it a community center because it can be a church, but anybody can use it, so that kind of broadens us. Boarding school, nurses' housing, septic, we drill wells, we use solar. I mean, it's just another level that I never dreamed would happen.
No
but
kidding.
Those have continued to go. Our buildings have continued to go throughout the whole pandemic. And here's why. These are our full-time staff members in Uganda. We have over 40 employees in Uganda.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they are... because we have a good reputation, people really want to work for us. We pay on time and all of that. And so we've been able to raise the standard of if they're a social worker, if they're a field officer we have about 3,000 kids we sponsor. If we hire a field officer, they have to have a social worker's degree. We have very educated people. They're what they did, their theme is, because we couldn't go for 2 years, they said, while you were away, this is what we did. And our team here in Arizona monitors and communicates with them every day, so I want to make sure I give them credit. But anyway, it's been absolutely crazy. Now, one of the most urgent things we do is safe water, and you've heard us talk about that many times. Every day, this really gets me. Every day, 3,000 kids die because of the lack of clean water, poor sanitation. Here's what we've been able to do in the last about 10 years or 9 years, is that we've drilled now 845 deep water boreholes, and that's we try to go conservatively, because I say we don't have to exaggerate anything we do. That's saved nearly 3 million people. Whew. So it's absolutely incredible. To see that. One of the things, that's kind of our triage. Then we provide meals through Feed My Starving Children. Many of you know them. Yep. We're A+ with them. You've packed with them before. Yep. And we've got containers on the water as I speak, even through all of this that we've been doing. So we give about 1 million nutritious meals a year around. But the foundation of everything we do is sponsoring that child, because as I often say, an educated child can break the cycle of poverty.
Yep.
And so if we can educate them, so that means more than any of this. We have to do water to save their lives. We have to provide medical. We have to provide nutrition. But then we can sponsor a child. And I think we have a graphic next of the numbers. Well, no, this is the foundational scripture that says, train a child up in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. Let's look at that next slide there. This is what it provides. For $31 a month, $1 a day, and we've kept it there, and it provides all of this highest quality education.
Uniforms.
Thank you. Maybe I have to have you read this, Tim. I'm 70 now.
Because in some places, they have to have the uniform to be able to go to school.
Yes, that's
and if
right.
you can't afford that, you can't go to school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what else are we doing?
Well, you're motivating and improving grades.
Right.
Of course, you've got the social workers who are helping out the kids. Medical care. It says 1 to 2 meals a day.
Yeah. And that's unusual.
Yeah.
Because
it's
for many
so
of them,
important, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. That has to be a part of it.
Yep.
And
Christ-centered extended family.
Yeah, and let me just say something about that. That's a non-negotiable with me and with my board over the years, is we want to be able to share the message of Christ. We're not a humanitarian organization. We're faith-based, and we've really stuck with that. Yeah. And that's very important. And for many of our partners around the world, whether you're in the Philippines or Guatemala or Romania or Uganda or Kenya, wherever we are, faith is a big part for them.
Yep.
And so this works really, really well. And we partner with numbers of churches like we do with yours. So Community of Grace is a blessing. Look at this. So 83 children have been sponsored through their education through people here.
That's cool.
I love it.
Yep.
Love it. So thank you very much for that.
Yep.
And as well as from this church alone, 4 boreholes have been drilled. So this is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you, Grace, for your partnership and all of this. And this is just a nutshell. You can go to our website and read up on more. But God's hand of favor on us again is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
We're at the best place we've ever been in our 49-year history.
So Michelle Hallinan.
Yeah.
It was the first person that I asked to be on staff when we started this church 17 years ago.
Okay.
She is retiring.
I heard that.
Yeah, amazing. She's retiring.
I'll believe it when I see it.
She thinks she is, right?
Right.
You know, we're in a battle of prayers right now.
Okay.
You know, the prayers of all of us versus Michelle's prayers. We're
Right.
going to see who God listens to the most.
I'm with you on that one.
And she's phasing out. She'll probably stay as a consultant with us for a while.
Sure.
She worked for you for many, many years.
Yeah, 13 years.
Yeah.
You stole her.
Yeah, we did. And actually the way that we got to know her was that you had hired her at Community Church of Joy.
Right.
And she did a lot of missions work with you. And so we thought that to honor Michelle and Joe, her husband, in their retirement, and because of our partnership with you and her partnership with you, we want to give you a check today that you didn't know about, so you'll be surprised. We're going to do another water well.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
So $10,500.
Yes.
Right there. That's
in their honor?
Yes. In their, so it's
beautiful.
So whenever you build that one, it's the Joe and Michelle or the Michelle and Joe, whichever you want to say.
Well, it's Michelle and Joe.
Yeah, Michelle and Joe.
Because she was my boss for 13 years.
And that's happening because of Community Grace. It's because of your giving to be able to provide. So that would provide water for a community of people, right?
Yeah, very much so. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, will benefit from that. And here's the thing. With our program, we don't just drill the well. We make sure it's restored if it needs updating. Where we've got stainless steel that we use now, which we didn't have at the beginning, it'll be there 30 to 50 years.
Yeah.
So think of it. 50 years from now, kids being born will benefit from that.
Yeah. I think of two things with this kind of. First of all, I think about the great stories in the Bible that took place around the well.
Yes.
And how important those were.
Yes.
Jesus' encounter with the Samaritan woman.
That's right.
And all these different stories around wells. And then I think about some of the experiences that we had when we were in Rwanda.
Right.
And hearing these stories of young children having to walk 4, 5, 6 miles one way just to get water.
That's right. Still today.
And so these wells are life-giving. For those
absolutely.
So,
absolutely changes their life.
So let me add our thanks, Community of Grace, for this, and Joe and Michelle. Michelle, I guess for retiring. That's a $10,000 gift for you because she retired. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So, Tom,
That's
I'm
great.
going to give you kind of the final word. You've experienced so much of God's grace
Yeah.
in your life.
Yep.
What would you want to say to people watching right now about God's love for them?
Oh, well, a story that I love to tell, and it's one you've heard me tell, Tim, is I think a turning point in my life. I told you earlier about going to LBI in Los Angeles, and one weekend I went out and broke the rules. They're pretty strict rules. No drinking, drugs, curfew breaking, and I pretty much did all of them. And Monday morning I came to chapel, and it was a small school of, 120 or something like that. And Dr. Force was our president, and he sent word to me he wanted to see me after chapel. Well, I'm thinking somebody in this room told on me, and I was ready to fold it up and say, I can't do this. And I went to his office, and he calmly said to me, you had a difficult weekend, didn't you? And he said, don't say what you did. Because he said, I want you to remain here. And right now, I'm in shock, okay? And he said, but I just want you to know, I've been thinking about you all weekend and praying for you and couldn't get you out of my mind. And then he said, all I'm asking you is if you will kneel with me and pray for me. And at that point, I'm saying, me pray for you? And I don't remember what I prayed, but he said, put your hands on me. And I laid hands on Dr. Force and prayed, I'm sure it was a pretty bad prayer. And then he prayed for me. And then he said, Tom, here's what I want you to remember. The foot at the cross is level. It takes the same grace and the same love to forgive me as you. And 49 years later, I still think of that because so often we think, well, why would God use me? I have failed. I've made mistakes. I've stumbled. I've been selfish. I've been this. I've been that. And as I reflect on 49 years coming to our 50th, I'm thinking, God, you saw me in my mother's womb. You had a design on my life. You had a purpose. And I can't believe all that I'm experiencing. But then this thought came in, I'm sure you had more in mind for my life. So my encouragement is, when you get discouraged, when you think God is giving up on you, when you think, how can God use me in this way, remember the ground at the foot of the cross is level. And that's kind of my life deal right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. It's really been good to reconnect.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I want to pray for you.
Yeah.
I want to pray for Hope for Kids International.
Thank you.
Let's have a word of prayer together.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for our time together. And just how inspiring and encouraging it is to hear your story of grace through Tom's life that has impacted Community of Grace and how we've been a part of his story. He's been a part of ours. And all of us together doing that Jesus thing of bringing that reckless grace to the world around us. So I pray for Tom. I pray for his family. I pray for his brother Rick going through cancer right now and Rick's wife. I want to pray for the great work that Hope for Kids International is doing, that you would continue to provide for all the financial needs that this organization has for the sake of the world that you love. And Heavenly Father, we give you all the praise and honor and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.